Good morning, everyone. Today we're having a look at St. Paul's teaching from Romans chapter 8, verses 31 to 39. Now, important to understand that what I'm sharing with you is written in the first person. In other words, it is St. Paul expressing his own opinion about his situation at the time. And so we need to read about what message there is there for us, depending on what he's talking about specifically to the circumstances that he's in. And he says, with God on our side, who can be against us? And remember, he was living in pretty difficult times, having been a Roman Jew and having supported the Romans and the Jewish authorities against the early Christians. He was in a tough difficult. A lot of people would be against him, and those people who wanted to follow him often had a lot of opposition. But he then continues and says, nothing can ever come between us and the love of God. I think that's an important element, is to consider the love of God as a gift that each of us has. And have we ever sort of allowed ourselves to experience that love, that intimate occasion, that intimate opportunity, where regardless of what difficulty we might be going through in life, regardless of what circumstances we might be in, nothing is going to stop God from loving us. And it's always there and it's always available to us. So no matter how difficult things are for us, we need to appreciate that love is always available and should always be present. And we should be able to reciprocate it as well. We need to think about, can we say ourselves, as St. Paul said, that in our present situation, whatever we're in, that nothing can come between us and God. We also need to perhaps think about, sometimes we create our own little rules, and I'll talk a little more about this tomorrow. Do we create our own sort of set of circumstances or rules that sort of say, well, I'm going to love God up to a certain level, but he needs to understand there's a cutoff point because I've got other things on my mind. So the love of God only goes so far. We'll be careful about that. The circumstances we're in might actually push us to a stage where we feel that we are distracted by other things, but never to ignore the love of God, which is why prayer, and as I've said earlier in the week, going on retreats if we can, find that quiet and spiritual time that allows us to balance out the mundane things that we have in our lives. So keep the love of God with you today. We'll see you again. God bless. Bye-bye.